If ye love me, keep my commandments. And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another Comforter. Christ's commandment is, that ye love one another as I have loved you. When we keep his commandment, we share in his comfort. When brothers and sisters in Russia faced hardship and starvation in the 1920s, North American Mennonites sent food, tractors, and plows. Relief efforts grew in response to the devastation of World War II. Shipments of clothing, school and hygiene supplies, and food to meet the most basic of human needs were gathered and contributed by various Mennonite conferences, coordinated by a central committee bringing relief in the name of Christ. In communities throughout the U.S. and Canada, truckloads of meat were canned, and tons of used clothing donated and baled. On the East Coast, collection and distribution of material aid was focused in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. Relief kits, blankets and comforters, used clothing and canned meat are gathered and sent around the globe, where disaster or war leaves people cold, hungry, and without shelter. Hundreds of volunteers check and pack kits, quilt and make comforters, process shoes and clothing, pack and ship, as well as make items for sale and recycle, generating income to support MCC programs. The large number of volunteers included many traveling from the eastern Pennsylvania communities around Franconia, Harleysville, and Souderton, source of much of the aid sent to Ephrata. In 2003, a request came to two of the MCC East Coast board members representing that area.
Mr. Norm Good and myself are on the East Coast board of MCC, and they said, they were running out of space, and they requested that we should look for something in this area. That's really where it started.
The MCC Material Resources Center of Harleysville, opened in May of 2003, was independently financed, supported by local churches and individuals, and governed by its own board.
Back then, as we got things going and we set up the building, it was all hands-on. Like, board members were the ones who were doing everything.
Board member Norm Good met with those anxious to help MCC without traveling to Ephrata. Dorothy Detweiler directed sewing activities as the volunteer base and hours of operations increased. Henry and Millie Moore helped direct the center's daily activities, processing donated supplies, packing health, relief, and school kits. Steve Holtman oversaw warehousing and preparing shipments to Ephrata. All worked together to focus a community's compassion, sharing God's love with those who suffer.
They just really felt strongly that we would be able to reach out to others here, and they weren't afraid to go after that.
And they would soon have a new challenge. Within a few years, the space on Indian Creek Road couldn't contain the volume of people hours and material aid pouring in, and the search began for a larger facility. God was good in the person of Nelson Souter, who donated land for a new building. But a prolonged and unsuccessful permitting process led Norm Good and the board to consider a new path. Business owners Rod Kratz and Ken Clemmer had begun construction of a new building off of Schoolhouse Road in Franconia Township and hoped for another partner. A new door was opened.
All permits are done. Everything's done. No permits, no nothing. All we have to do is say yes.
And they did. By January of 2010, the building and move were complete, and Norm and Helen Good could be present at the center's dedication.
I just appreciated so much being involved with Norm Good. I mean, he was always helping somebody else out.
He had an amazing faith and always had a heart for people and for helping people. He loved physical work, he loved building, he loved seeing things happen for the Lord.
10 years after its founding, the Mennonite Central Committee Material Resource Center of Harleysville, at its new Souderton address, is a creator of comfort, sharing God's love in the name of Jesus Christ. An independent board of directors, with Abe Landis as president, shapes the MRC's mission, aided by 2 staff members. Sharon Swartzentruber coordinates day-to-day activities, and Steve Holtman is the warehouse manager.
We exist to benefit MCC. So whatever we collect and whatever proceeds we have from our fundraising activities is all put in toward helping MCC.
Much of the material aid provided MCC is in the form of 6 different kits. Many of them will be packed in cloth bags, sewn by the thousands in homes or churches with a drawstring added. School kits, filled with the basic supplies a child will need, are the item the MRC collects in the greatest number.
Our August donation of the month is school kits for Mennonite Central Committee.
Congregations will often take on school kits as a project, filling them at home or as an annual fellowship-building activity. In 2012, groups and individuals brought over 6,000 school kits to the Material Resource Center of Harleysville. Hygiene kits are packed for one person, while relief kits can supply a family of 4 and are packed in sturdy plastic buckets to be sent wherever violence or natural disaster leaves people with the most basic human needs. Material is cut out to sew into baby gowns, part of the infant care kits. A smaller number of AIDS caregiver kits and sewing kits are also prepared. Many of the man, but mostly woman hours given to the MRC, whether at the center or in church sewing circles, go to the creation of comforters.
There's a lot of work to make a comforter. Somebody cuts the fabric into pieces. We use a lot of 9-inch blocks. I think it takes 70 blocks to make a comforter top. And then somebody has to sew them together and then put them together with a back that looks nice. So you have to cut a backing fabric and cut the batting. We get batting in big rolls. And then it takes, one person could probably knot a comforter in 3 hours, depending how speedy they were. So if you have 4 women around a comforter, and in an hour probably they can finish one. And then somebody has to take it home. Usually they do this at home, sew around the edges. So there's a lot of hours that go into one comforter.
Hand and machine quilting are also done, making quilts for auction at relief sales and other fundraising activities. Once a year, the MCC mobile meat canner visits the Harleysville area, bringing a surge of volunteer activity.
The meat canner is really, it's a 48-foot trailer and it's all self-contained. So this meat they guarantee for 7 years unrefrigerated because it's sterile. So this way when it's in cans they can ship it anywhere in the world unrefrigerated and somebody can put it on the shelf. Again, this year here we done just a little under 14,000 cans. We only use boneless fresh ham. I say if you're going to give something away, you want to give away the best.
Along with the work of gathering and processing material aid, many volunteers contribute to a parallel activity.
I mean, really, we're somewhat of a recycling center, too.
We've been really happy to be able to be involved in some of the recycling projects. It keeps the things out of the landfill that aren't useful anymore, so it's really a beneficial work that we're doing, as well as getting some revenue for MCC's projects.
Much of the activity in the warehouse involves excess items from the care and share thrift shops, sorting and grading items for sale to brokers for resale. Medical supplies can be shipped to Ephrata. Used clothing is gathered from a number of sources, including the Open Door thrift store in Royersford, to be loaded into a baler and compressed into 1,000-pound bales for sale to clothing dealers. Cardboard dropped off at the center is also baled and sold. Used books are sorted for paper quality and delivered to Ephrata to have their bindings removed. Old T-shirts are cut into rag-sized pieces, folded and bagged for sale. Strips of corduroy and jeans are woven into rugs to be sold along with quilts, comforters, and other handmade items in the MRC store. All of the money generated by this recycling and creative work, as well as through donations and by fundraising events like the annual Seafood Express trip and oyster dinner, beyond what's needed for operating expenses, can be used to support other needs and ministries. Between 50 and 100 grocery bags a month are sent to Philadelphia and distributed by the MCC office at Oxford Circle. MRC Harleysville also helps fund the annual Philadelphia MCC Festival and Auction, raising money for MCC programs locally and around the world. Knowing we're part of God's global family and can help MCC bring relief, development, and peace is what draws people through the Material Resource Center's doors.
Working with MCC in a different country, that was an important part of my growing up, and I'm so glad that I now have the opportunity to work here and feel like it's meaningful work and it's important. And I also feel very privileged to work alongside these dedicated volunteers. It's just really a privilege to work with people who are so passionate about their work and passionate about MCC's work.
This whole operation would not work if it wasn't for volunteers. It would not work.
Last year, 200 volunteers donated 21,000 hours in 1 year's time. I think people enjoy coming here. It's kind of a relaxed setting, and you don't have to hurry. If you want to sit and chat for a while, that's okay. And if you want to have a cup of coffee, we don't mind. And it just becomes kind of like a family setting. I think people enjoy using their hands. It makes us feel good to feel like we're doing something to help somebody else with our hands. I think a lot of people are really concerned about people in other countries who don't have enough. Everything that we collect here is then sent to Ephrata. So when we're collecting things, we're never quite sure where they're going to end up. Most of us just work in faith. We've never been to these places, and we can't really picture what the people's lives are like who are receiving the items that we're preparing for them.
But that's not always the case. When a team from the Harleysville MRC traveled to Central America, Brenda Sims saw Henry Moore make a wonderful discovery.
His eyes were welling up with tears, and we're like, Henry, what's going on? He's like, these are our kits. These are kits that we packed.
We used a certain wire. So when we distributed them, we saw that they were wired with the wire that we used. So we knew that we made them.
These volunteers at Harleysville should know that their fingerprints literally are on things which are distributed in many countries around the world through the ministries of MCC, done, as always, in the name of Christ.
We're doing the Lord's work, and He's working with us, and He's directing our way. Because it is a lot more overwhelming than I can handle.